Toothless. Okay, got it.
So nobody plays on Thursdays?
Normally they do. Normally Thursday night is a good night to go out, and that's kind of where it starts happening.
You like Taco Tuesday, Wine Wednesday,
That's kind of where it starts
Thrasher Thursday.
happening. So we went over to a place called Two Tarts, which is a little bakery that I didn't realize was open. They were going to be open that late, but they stay open until 10 o'clock at night now. It's kind of funny because it's called Two Tarts.
Yeah.
And it's owned by two women who are lesbians.
Yeah.
And they named it Two Tarts.
Yeah.
Kind of like
after the pastry.
Kind of yes and kind of no. You know, like
yeah, I get it.
They they go in and they bake all these incredible. I mean, it's always citrical. You know, it's like, hey, here's this and here's this. We got this today. Here's this, and boy, they do a great job. They make some really fun stuff. So we went in and we had that, and then kind of coming out of there, it was like there was nothing else going on. It was weird. So
today's Friday, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I lose track of days too.
Friday the 13th. All right. Perfect.
Okay, Jason. All right, Jason.
That's not. I'm not Jason.
No, I know you're not, but isn't that the character?
We're streaming. We're streaming everywhere. Welcome to the show.
Whatever it may be.
What do you want to call it? Call it panic interrupt? That'd be funny. Pattern interrupt. No, we haven't done that one yet. It should be podcast specific, not stream and podcast. Shelf help show, Friday night version. Fridays were always reserved for whatever. And recently it's been a lot of whatever. Let's get together, let's talk some shit. I believe I put in the show notes tonight. We do a little bit of news, traffic, and weather. A little old school style. To kind of see what's going on out there in the universe. If there's anything worth worrying about other than yourself. And remember, at the end of the day, it's all your fault anyway. So there's really not a lot of point in suffering about it. But just say here's the truth. You're hurtling towards your death at an incredible rate of speed. There's nothing you can do to stop it.
You know what the leading cause of death is?
Death?
No, birth.
Birth, yeah. Yep. So
let's be honest. Let's just tell people, let's be honest. I hit you up out of the blue and go, want to just improv a show tonight?
Yeah.
And most of the time you go, yeah, let's do it. I mean, I did that today with you, right?
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I can probably make it home by 10 o'clock tonight. Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think I can.
Yeah, why not?
And now at this point in time, we have no idea what we're going to talk about.
No, that's not.
We're going to talk about something.
You
Might just be this.
You got cotton candy, you're good, man. Listen, you enjoy your cotton candy. If you feel like you want to bust out an axe later and noodle around with it, do that. We're gonna do a couple of fun things today, I think.
You said you were gonna put what did you text me? You said like I'm gonna put my creative brain on or something like that. And you're like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
figure out something,
yeah.
which is good.
There's plenty out there. So, hey, do you know any YouTubers by chance? Or you pay attention to that world at all? YouTube entertainers,
The what?
YouTube entertainers or content creators?
A little bit,
A little bit. Okay.
not much.
There's a young man goes by Mr. Beast.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Beast, he's been putting out content for like 7, 8 years, I think. He started quite young because he's 25 now. And
So
he
so
he's a phenom. He is unbelievable. So a lot of the videos he did, he studied and studied and studied how to make videos go viral. Like, what's the secret? He would research other people's videos, of course, put his own up. Always attempting to put up good content, something entertaining, and then he'd study and try and figure out what brings the audience in, what pushes them away. How fast you need to cut from idea to idea. What's their total attention span? The setup, the payoff, all those things. And he has mastered, I would say absolutely mastered, the skill of making these videos. Now, very early on, I don't know if he got he did a free stunt. He did a free thing. He decided to make a video of himself counting to 100,000. Now he didn't even know how long it would take. He had no clue. He just picked it out of thin air. I'm gonna count to 100,000, and he recorded himself doing it. And it took 40 hours. One, that's crazy. At this pace, 1, 2, 3, 4. It took 40 hours to count to 100,000. And he gained a tremendous following. I remember when he did it because my son was like 12, and between he and the girls, they were like, "You want to watch Mr. Beast count to 100,000?" I'm like, "No, absolutely not." Thank you very much. So he did this free gimmicky thing, and he did it to be. You never know what ideas are going to be the best ideas, but you can do your best to implement them, the best way possible. He also said, make sure you don't refuse ideas unless there's absolutely no way to actually get it done. It's like the death of good ideas is self-doubt, and then if you're working with a group of people to push your vision, then having naysayers in the crowd. So he's like, an idea is an idea. If you think you can do it, then do it. And if you run into speed bumps, then figure out, can you get around them? Can you go under it? What do you need to do in order to get to that goal? Don't assume that other people's failures are your own, because they're not. Now Mr. Beast is 25 years old. Oh, I'm sorry. So he starts accumulating viewers and subscribers after that 100,000 40-hour video, and continues to do his best to make good content. He started giving away some money. One of the first things he did was a video on giving away $1,000, giving somebody $1,000 who works in a restaurant to see if we can get them to quit their job. And he'd go in and just go up and offer people 100 grand. I think it was like 100 grand. I don't know, maybe it was smaller, maybe it was $1,000. but he started to give things away just to see how people would react, and that was pretty new for the YouTubes.
I think I think I just saw this today
Yeah,
on Facebook because there was a guy who was kind of doing, and maybe it's not the same guy, but he was kind of doing the same exact thing.
yeah. There's a lot of shorts out there
Like,
now where people
like
are doing that.
I'm gonna give you $100 if you just do this.
Right,
And $100 to a lot of people is a lot of money.
right.
It's kind of it's a lot of money to me. I mean, yeah, give me $100. I'd love that. That sounds awesome.
Right.
And
Or a lot of people have shorts where they're basically paying people if they are generous. So they'll be like, hey, I'm really hungry. Is there any way I can get $1 from you? Something. And most people blow them off. And of course it's like the person who gives them their last dollar. He's like, here's $1,000.
we just went through this in Houston because I just got back from a trip with my girlfriend's family. And we're driving in a brand new Chevy lifted truck that's outrageous or whatever.
Right.
And
You got a $50,000 truck with $30,000 worth of wheels on it.
yeah, and there was a woman on the side of the road with her holding up a sign, and she wasn't asking for money. She was like, I need food. And you could tell that this woman was not good. Like, she looked like she had a really hard time.
Yeah.
She should not have been sitting on the side of the road. And we had just come from eating at this fancy Indian restaurant. And the 7-year-old had, he brought home his French fries, which were not going to taste good anyway.
Right.
French fries, unless you got a, I don't know, some way to.
They never reheat the same.
Yeah, they're never as good afterwards, right?
Right. It's not like leftover ribs in the fridge. Leftover ribs in the fridge are better. Leftover lasagna, better.
I'll eat leftover ribs any day of the week, but leftover French fries,
No, yeah, not so much.
that's what my air fryer is for. Just throw them in there and cook them up, and all of a sudden they come back to life. But we could just tell she was just like down and out,
Right.
and so it wasn't my call. I was just a passenger, but the son pulled down the window and he said, give me the French fries, give me the bag. And I handed it off to, and she just came running for it. And you could tell like she was going to get fed that night. And I don't know, it was weird because I haven't, where I live, it doesn't happen that often. But you go down to Houston,
Yeah.
boy, it's everywhere. It reminds me of being in like San Diego, and even when I drive up to Austin, there's things like that. And it's just an odd environment to be in, and then you get caught up in it a little bit. And sometimes there's people out there that are just scamming the system. They're
Right.
they don't actually need it. This woman needed it.
Right.
She looked like she was, right on the edge, about to die. So
I'm hungry.
she got some French fries. That's yeah, it's a weird kind of place to be in.
Well, at
And
least they weren't cold from the fridge.
I dealt last, yeah, I dealt last night when we were at Two Tarts, and here we are like buying, I don't know, $25 worth of, really yummy things, like
Mhm.
humongous donuts, and we're walking out, and everything's great. And as we're doing it, my friend calls me up, and he says, "Hey, I have a friend who has uh, patri patriac patriac no, can't say the word.
I could barely hear you. Can you
Oh, pancreatic cancer? No.
pancreatic cancer? Okay, yeah,
Yeah. So this guy's dying.
yeah.
It's a pretty bad run.
It's a fatal.
Yeah. And he goes, "I know you're a musician. Can you get me some weed?"
Hmm,
And I said, "Well, because we're in Texas, and Texas doesn't do, we don't legalize weed,
right.
which is kind of funny, compared to where you live, where, you just go down to the local store, I guess, and get it or whatever." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I've got some." I said, "How soon do you need it?" And he goes, "Well, maybe by Saturday." And I said, "I do have a person." I said, "But it's not cheap, because weed, compared to like Cheech and Chong days, is completely different,
Oh yeah.
and you're paying a lot of money." And
Well,
I lucked out,
relative.
I lucked out with what I got, and I haven't. It's just been sitting in a Tupperware container because I actually don't like weed. It's not it's not my thing. And so I told him, "Hey, you know what? I'll give you some. Give him a couple nuggets and let him try it and see what he does." And
Right, and then tell the other third graders.
third graders,
Yeah, and then when they go hooked, then we're gonna start charging.
no, I'll just turn him on to. I know where it came from, so
Turn them on to some heroin. That's right.
that's
Baby
right.
steps. Baby steps.
But
I like where your head's at.
I would think if you're not a smoker, um, probably doing edibles is more effective.
Yeah, edibles are pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean, you got to wait, what, 45 minutes or something like that for them to kick in, or
Yeah, you have to be patient and digest.
yeah.
And
But
then it metabolizes into
if you're dealing with cerebral palsy or cancer or something like that, I think that's all the reason to get on that.
I think just because you like to get high is acceptable.
Uh,
I
that's
don't think you have to have any major condition. I think that humans have been chasing down adulterants since time immemorial, and it's probably psychedelics specifically that uh, changed us from um, this the dumb ape on the Serengeti to the stoned ape that became aware of his own death, his own existence, his own sense of self. I think it all came from chomping on mushrooms when we started to evolve, or Jesus.
I don't know.
Either way,
But what I do know is what it brought up to me in my mind was I have been waiting for a long time, because you know
for what?
I know this circle, I know these people, with my mom right now, going through her cancer situation.
Mhm.
I wanted to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should think about doing this because it stimulates your appetite. It cuts down on your, thinking about everything. It seems like a good idea to me. And maybe it's not. I don't know. But it that legitimizes the idea of the concept to me. But my mom is going to be somebody who, I mean, my mom. She's not going to want to do it.
Right.
You know,
It's because somebody said no, so the no means no.
because it's Cheech and I always go back to it, Cheech and Chong, which was funny. It was a joke, but when people look at it, they kind of go, "Oh, this is this is no good. These guys are they're potheads or whatever." And then you got like
They're reefer addicts.
yeah, Spicoli
Mhm.
and yeah, all of that, and it's like man, it kind of sucks because I think there's a place for it. It's
Mhm.
just not the place that I mean, if you're just doing it to get high, maybe not so good.
Why?
I don't know.
You can get high and happy and be content and
I,
chilling with your family and doing your thing.
I don't, well, okay. So one of the problems I have with it is this. If you're getting high and like driving your car, and supposedly now they can test for it, but I don't know if they can or not. I'm not really sure. But you,
Not really. They can do field sobriety tests, but there's
you shouldn't be behind the wheel and
no.
doing it.
I agree. Well, we're not talking about breaking a law such as driving under the influence. That's
Yeah, but
different.
but
But
you know that people are going to do that. Some,
you
not
know
every.
that you know that those people already do that.
Yeah, yeah,
So they found where they've legalized marijuana, first for medicinal, because that expands to most of the community anyway. And then if it's just full on for whatever recreational, it's just a different tax. Um, you can talk to cops who've been on the beat for 30 years and they're like, I've never had a problem with a stoned person, like in 30 years. He goes, they're not even ambitious enough to get out there and go wreak havoc and cause problems. Now drunk people bad. Drunk people get behind the wheel and they have this inflated sense of self-control and power, and they don't even realize they're blackout drunk. It's like drunk people are all the situations with drunk people are bad.
it's
But
they're
people who are high on pot,
dangerous. They're
people who are high on you know um
methamphetamines.
PCP.
Yeah,
He said meth is the other dangerous one between all the drugs. It actually, I think it was a LA police officer that I was listening to him being interviewed. He said meth is bad because really because the tweakers will go out and they will rob and steal and they will do things that are stupid and reckless and wind up killing themselves often, like every night. He's like, so the tweakers will be out there trying to take copper wire out of buildings.
yeah, that's right.
And,
Just
yeah,
to go sell it. Yeah,
yeah, and they get like literally electrified and stuck to the building, like
just just last night
horrible things.
I was watching because I like to go back to him all the time, occasionally, but I like to watch Dave Chappelle. Um, I feel like he educates me in a very humorous way, and I like what he has to say.
Talk about riding the lightning.
And he knows, you know, like
He takes people's controversy and he makes his commentary on the controversy seem like he's not holding the same opinion, although he is,
yeah, yeah. And so the other night it was like, because he's all over Netflix. And I was watching Sticks and Stones, and he came to a part where he was talking about specifically where he lived, which was like Ohio,
Yeah.
and all the white people were on heroin. And he's got a really comedic way of doing it, like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, it's really cool. Like it's funny because you're listening to him, you're kind of going, oh, this is funny. And he goes, this is exactly what it was like when white people watched black people doing crack. And he said, I felt exactly the same way. I didn't care. Which again is another joke,
Right.
He always lines it with a joke,
Mm.
but you start to think about it, you're like, wow, it's like there's there are all these massive drugs out there in the world that people are doing, whether it be, it kind of depends on who you are,
Yeah.
you know, uh, whether it's crack or coke or meth or heroin or whatever,
Hmm.
And I haven't done any of those things.
I haven't not done any of those things. Um,
Nice, nice.
Dr. Carl Hart. He's he is a professor, and he's also a research scientist on drugs, narcotics, how it affects people in communities. He's been funded by the federal government, I don't know, for like 25, 30 years. And actually authorized, like he was the only person authorized to do weed tests with subjects where they can come in and it was federal weed. He had the only access to federal weed. And he would, basically get people high, ask questions, try and figure out, scientifically how to evaluate it. Well, he was anti-drug for sure, and he was definitely a big proponent of it's the bane of the black community. He's a black man too. Dreadlocks, but not any cool Rastafari accent. So Dr. Hart, he wrote papers and dissertations on drugs killing the inner city youth, and he would get more money from the federal government to get more grants, do more research, and prove why drugs are bad. So, he gets the opportunity to test MDMA, aka ecstasy, with a group of people, and he went into a certain assumptions on how people would act, and and they would have you'd have your control group would get nothing, or they get a placebo. Your placebo group, your 150 milligram dose group, and like your 10 milligram dose group. 150 milligrams is like a max single dose to start with. Then he's trying to evaluate with these people, like, why do they become drug addicts, and why are they willing to do this anyway? And so he has an idea as he's testing this group of people, and he starts to offer them $5 instead of the drugs. Now they're coming in on a weekly basis to participate in the drug setting. They know they're going to get drugs, and then that's part of the deal. Is if you're doing drugs, when then so they know that these are people who do drugs. If you're doing drugs outside of this study, then at least on this day, or the 12 hours leading up to when we do our testing, like please come sober. Don't come jacked up on something else because it's going to mess up our results. Well, he starts figuring out like how can you incentivize people to not do drugs? And he's taking these people who've been on drugs their entire lives, kind of looking forward to the government ecstasy or the government weed, and they like Dr. Hart. He's a cool guy, and he starts offering people $5. He's like, I will give you $5 if you don't do the drug that we have right here. And we'll just hang out. And he thought for sure.
Anybody take it?
Well, he thought for sure that his expected result was those who were on higher doses would be the ones who would definitely not take $5 over the drug. And then those who were on the lower doses would possibly trade it because they're not super fucked up, or they're not on, right.
The higher dose people already knew they could get the $5 and then just walk out the door and then go get high, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, after the end of the session. But yeah, that was the idea. Is like take $5, do what you want with it. But we're not going to be. That'll be in place of doing the drugs in the clinic today. And basically, what he found was that for the most part, everybody was willing to take the $5 if they needed the $5. The drugs weren't not the important part. He said so. Even the people who were bona fide daily use drug addicts would be like, unless somebody was in a bad spot where they were starting to detox or something.
But did they? My question would be:
did they use it to go score drugs? No, the $5 was not enough to replace the drugs that they were giving up.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure because I don't know, what drugs cost and things like that.
So yeah, the $5 was not enough to be a replacement.
This whole entire conversation where it's leading reminds me of, and I recently watched it with my daughter.
Watch what?
I haven't said it yet, but I recently watched it with my daughter, which is The Men Who Stare at Goats. And have you seen that movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Joel, the Coen brothers.
Yeah. And when you watch that movie and they do all the psychedelics and they go through the whole entire thing, and what's the main actor?
George Clooney.
Yeah, Clooney's the guy who actually has like a little bit of connection, and then he's the guy in the thing while the reporter's with him, and then the reporter becomes the guy who eventually figures it all out. Like he understands how to run through the wall. He understands that it's all energy. He understands that physical object is actually not physical. It just looks physical because that's what we're trained to think, I mean, what a glorious movie. I've had to watch it like 3 or 4 times because the first time I watched it, I was like, this is the goofiest thing I've ever seen.
Well, of course, yeah. They wrapped it up in a goofy story with goofy people who were being incentivized to prove whether or not you can actually astral project.
Yeah, and they were doing all these things, that I was kind of raised with, but I never mastered it. I never got a grasp of it. So it really cracked me up to watch the movie and be just like, wow, look at him, like his character, because sometimes, occasionally, I get to do it, which is like, turn right instead of left, and you just go with the instinct, you know. But you never know if you're right or not.
Hmm.
But those guys were all doing, and what was who was the guy who his career came to an end? I think he's coming back a little bit, but it was all during the whole entire time where everybody in Hollywood was getting hit.
Where what was?
Everybody in Hollywood was getting hit. Uh, Kevin Spacey, is that right?
Oh yeah, Spacey. Yeah.
Yeah, because he had a little, all of a sudden came out that he was gay,
Yeah,
and
yeah, he's a PB grabber. Yeah.
yeah. There were all these guys taken down, and he was one of them. And all of a sudden, it was like, "Hey, your show's canceled.
Oh
We're
yeah.
all your shows.
Yeah,
No
he got me. He got me
movies,
too.
You're down." Um, and then his character in that movie was really funny too, because you know he wanted so badly to have that ability that he
Right.
just was cheating the system in order to do it. The character, not a
Right.
different person. Which also brings up, I don't care who you are, I will go to bat for Louis C.K. every single day. I do not understand what he did wrong.
What?
Really,
He liked to jerk off into potted plants and have people in the room while he did it.
yeah,
And he gave them a choice.
yeah. Hey,
And everyone in the
the
industry who
door.
was his friend knew about it.
That's the door.
Right.
Just,
He's like, yeah, it's how he expended his nervous energy. He's like, hey, I'm gonna go rub one out. And
just walk out the door.
I
It's
know.
right there.
I know.
Oh no, I couldn't do it. And I sat there and he did this, and
Yeah.
and I'm like, the guy is brilliant, man.
Oh, he's doing fine. He's been.
Oh, I know.
He took 2 weeks off and then he kept touring. And then he was happy to be out of his show anyways.
He's still working. Yeah, I know.
He's beyond working. Yeah. Yeah.
And he can work behind the scenes all the
Yeah,
time
you're not gonna put him on a network.
because he's a brilliant writer, and he can write comedy like nobody's business. But boy, when everything came down on him, I was like, oh man, don't go after Louis. I don't want that.
Right.
I love that guy. I'll go after everybody else. That I can handle. So probably said too much already.
No.
And hey, what time is it?
I believe I was making a point. And then
I sidetracked you.
you put my point in the headlock for a minute. Oh, yeah, many whose spirit goats. Back up. Dr. Carl Hart.
Okay.
So Dr. Hart, come on, sir. Totally anti-drug. Starts incentivizing people $5. And what he found out was people who needed $5 because they needed to bring home food for their kids, people who needed $5 because they were poor, they would take the $5 over the drugs, and it's not like I said, it's not a balanced penny for penny trade-off. They would take the $5 because that would provide a sense of relief. And he goes, and their demeanor would change. Now he thought they were just there to get high at the clinic. As soon as he gave them something that made their life a little bit easier, at least for that moment, at least for on that horizon, it's like their gratitude came out, and their, the size, and some, they start talking to them and start, tearing up, like, I've been looking for work and we're trying to do this, and it's not that they were catering to homeless drug addicts. That wasn't the case. It was just people who were drug addicts, to figure out why. And after doing a lot of that research, he was like, people in the inner city want the exact same thing that anybody else does. They want to be able to earn a decent living. They want to be able to feed their children, and they want to have a roof over their head and know that there's going to be where the next meal is coming from. Like, it's basic human nature that people don't actually replace that need. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pyramid, where self-actualization is at the very top of the pyramid, at the very bottom of the pyramid are things like safety, community. Those are the big things. Those are the foundations, the foundational things that are important to every society. And it made him start to look at it differently. And he's like, $5 is not going to change somebody's life, but he realized if they would take the $5 over the drugs, they knew it was because the drugs were not going to make their family feel better.
All right.
The drugs were not going to solve anything for anybody else. But that $5 can take care of 5 people in their family.
Okay, I'm gonna play the devil's advocate of this situation. All
Speak up a little bit.
right. Sorry, my sinuses are really bad right now. So here, I'll scoot up a little bit, get closer to the computer. Can you hear me?
Well, yes, better. Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here, because I have to look at everything from 2 sides. I hear everything you're saying, and it sounds wonderful. But if you were a drug addict and you walked in and somebody offered you $5 instead of doing drugs, is there not a part of you that would want to just take the $5 so that you showed that you were not a drug addict, even though you were? You $5 isn't going to make the difference. $5 is going to get you a burger at McDonald's. That's all it's going to do.
Well, this is 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So let's say it'll get you a couple meals at McDonald's, right?
Okay, all right, that's fine. But it's really easy as you write your research and you write your thesis on things to go, hey, look, I offered $5 and look at all these people who did not want to do drugs anymore.
No, it's just for that day. These are still
okay.
He didn't stop people from being drug addicts. He found out that there's a priority of need that people have.
Okay.
And if we make an assumption.
Okay, but if I was a drug addict, and even 15 years ago, and you offered me $5, and let's say I was addicted to morphine or heroin or something like that,
yeah,
I wouldn't take it.
You wouldn't take if you had no money and you had no drugs.
No, I would. Well, but you get the drugs by going there, right? You get the drugs.
Yeah, they give you the dose.
Yeah. So
you don't need the drug. People make an assumption about addiction. People make a lot of assumptions about addiction, that those who are addicts are out of their minds. They are out of control. They,
at that point, at
Pretty
that
gross people who shit on the street.
okay, at that point in time,
Yeah.
it would depend where I was at on that day. So on Tuesday, maybe I would be like, yeah, just give me the $5.
Right.
But on Thursday, I would be like, no, man, I need to get shot up or whatever they do, whatever those things are. I don't know. Then again, I'm playing the other side of the coin. This sounds really good. It sounds great that he's able to write his little paper on it,
A
but
little paper. Don't be condescending.
I didn't say little paper.
You did.
No, I just said he was able to write his paper on it.
Uh,
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
his dude, outcome of research projects don't mean that everybody did things the same way. It just means that there is a preponderance of evidence that would lead you to make the assumption that this might be something that we would now study more. So it's not like he single-handedly could solve the drug problems with $5 a druggie. That wasn't it. What was it was that he came into this since day one, thinking that drug addicts are a certain breed of people and that they are different than other people and that they should be pitied and they should be looked down upon and they should be frowned upon. And he all he had was the research that he learned from the textbooks that taught him and the government research that taught him to have those opinions. And he said, as a matter of fact, he thought that it was like the 80s when methamphetamine was being talked about as being like so insanely dangerous. He thought, without having actually proven the research himself, he thought the difference between amphetamine and methamphetamine, which is a methyl carbon chain, a singular chain that's in that sequence. He assumed that because methamphetamine was way worse than regular amphetamines, according to the researchers, that it was because of that methyl carbon chain. And he just went with it. And he said he spouted off the same crap everybody else did, who didn't actually have any understanding of why would methamphetamine be worse. Well, it wasn't worse. It was myth. There was nothing in that methyl carbon chain that made you absorb it faster, made you act any different. It was government and media wanting to, just say no and everybody, let's go on a march.
Yeah. Do you remember? I can't remember what it was that was being sold.
When we went marching, we went down to the ships.
No. What was that stuff called? It was making everybody thin, and everybody who sold it was full of energy.
Benfen?
Yes.
No, Metabolife.
Yes, Metabolife. That's
yes.
right.
Yes.
I'm very well. I remember my mom got on it. She's like, if this becomes illegal, I don't know what I'm going to do because I need this in my life. I feel so good.
Yeah.
At the time, I couldn't afford it, so I wasn't taking it. I was taking an off-brand one that made me actually sick. But that everybody was just running around on meth.
Basically, yeah.
That's essentially what they were doing, but they just found a way to make it, sound. Hey, take Metabolife. It's you're You're gonna get thin. You're gonna feel good all the
It
time.
gave you energy. It gave you,
Yeah, it
you
gives you
all that euphoria.
memories. And all of a sudden there was like kids playing high school football, like dying, because they were taking a whole bunch of that crap, and it was insane, and then all of a sudden they didn't allow it anymore. They were like, yeah, that was a problem.
Metabolife was a San Diego born and raised
Yes, it was.
company, right? So
It,
here's the story behind Metabolife.
it was.
Metabolife was a dietary pill company, and they were using hold on.
I mean, they literally were selling meth to everyone.
No, they weren't literally selling meth. Hold on, give me a second.
All
I,
right,
I just have to remember the name.
I was trying to.
Because I started selling it in liquid form under it's a native name when it became outlawed. So
Yeah, because there were several offsprings that came from it.
yeah,
And there was also, like, if you went into any like gas station,
truck stops, yeah,
you could go in and get what was mini thins or something like
many
that.
things, right?
Yeah, which was essentially the same thing, but that had already been on the market.
So that derivative, ephedra. There we go. It was ephedra.
Oh, but yeah, that's right.
So ephedra hydrochloride
Yeah.
is the chemical that was used. And ephedra had been on the market since World War II when they invented speed. The Nazis did. And ephedra is also used in pseudoephedrine.
Well, and I still, to this day, I have to take a little bit of Sudafed because it's for my sinuses and stuff. And
It works.
well, yeah, but you notice that when you go in there, and anybody who's watched Breaking Bad, the TV show, that's what those guys did. They had what they called Smurfs who would go out and buy this stuff because when you buy it now, you have to write your name in and you have to say, "Hey, I'm,
You can't buy more than 120 pills at a time, and you have to have several.
okay." Yeah, I don't even know because I don't.
I always ask. It's like once every couple of years I'll get a sinus infection so I'll get some Sudafed also behind the counter stuff. And I always ask them, hey, I'm like, hey, I'm smurfing for my local meth dealer, and I don't remember how many I can buy at a time with my license. Can you remind me? They'll be like, you can buy 120. I'm like, 120 boxes? Dope. And they're like, no, pills. I'm like, oh, how many can I buy tomorrow?
Yeah,
They're like 120. I'm like, sweet, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll take the box of 120. They laugh at me because they can tell I'm not, obviously.
yeah. I used the line one time with a guy at Walgreens because I buy the off brand. No,
They're generic Sudafed.
yeah, what Wallfed or whatever.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy the name brand because it's the same thing.
Yep.
And then one time I commented, I said, I'm I guarantee I'm not a Smurf. And the guy started laughing. He goes, I know exactly what you're talking about. He goes, because I watched the show too.
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, I'm like, I mean, I actually need this because my sinuses are all screwed up and, I have
Well,
to.
here's the thing. Putting slapping a caution label onto Sudafed did not change the meth industry one iota.
No, but yet now we have to like
It's
give them your ID and
right.
you have to sign
You have to be
everything,
in the database, right? Right.
and then they track you as to how much you buy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I,
stupid.
I think that was the brilliance of that show was eventually they were, you know, Walter or Heisenberg, depending on how you want to refer to him. He finally figured out. He's like, because he was a chemist. He's like, well, you know what? Actually, we don't need that.
Right.
What we need is this.
We need a 50-gallon drum of this shit.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Which dummies didn't actually roll. They tried to carry, which it was like, it rolls. Come on, man.
Mhm.
So, well, I think I think we should wrap it up.
Oh yeah, because I didn't finish my Dr. Carl Hart or my Metabolite, so that's good.
Oh no, if you need to, go ahead. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I just, it's been a long day. I got up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
I'm down for conversation. I just wanted to complete my point. So,
Complete your point. I'll sit back and listen and try not to.
point counterpoint. People who say that drugs are bad or drug addicts are bad people or whatever the case may be, I just always feel like it's kind of short-sighted. People who usually have those opinions based on other people's opinions, not specifically other people's facts. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all drugs are safe and all drugs are a good idea for all people, because they're not. Absolutely not. However, demonizing a chemical versus demonizing or understanding a person are different things. 40% of Americans have done what it would be considered illegal drugs, outside of marijuana. And the addiction rate across all socioeconomic classes, all, including doctors, including judges, including lawyers, including everybody, including policemen. And by the way, ex-narcotic policemen from San Diego set up the Metabolite company. They were narc cops who got busted trafficking in methamphetamine. And when they got kicked out of the force, they started Metabolite and used ephedra instead. You know that? Yeah, 2 cops, $5 million worth of meth. They got kicked out of the force. They started Metabolite. They were meth dealer cops. Genius. But my point was with Dr. Hart. He was working with a research assistant, and after coming up with this idea of, like, maybe your hierarchy of needs is what determines whether or not you're going to do drugs, or whether or not you're in a position where you can. Maybe people aren't as dumb as we think they are. After the epiphany, he was charting the other people who were coming off of the ecstasy, and his descriptors. He said he got kind of limited. He was trying to explain what it is that they were explaining about how they felt, and like how it felt coming up and how it felt coming down, and how it felt to be high off of MDMA. So he's talking to this research assistant, and she's like, well, like, you don't need a thesaurus to be able to understand, like, when you got that dose, when you got your 150 milligram dose of ecstasy, like, it, like, what that feels like, right? And he's like, no, I don't. She's like, what? You've never tried ecstasy before? And he goes, no. How the hell can you be a lead researcher and have no idea? You can't relate to any of it, like, not even the initial feeling of euphoria. And he goes, no, I've never done drugs ever. Like, she's like, none? You don't even smoke weed? And these are professors and researchers who are, and he's like, no, it's against the law. she's like, oh, heaven help you. Heaven help you.
I I kind of I can kind of relate with that because even though I'm a musician, quote unquote,
Right.
um, my drug use is very low.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any tattoos. I'm just not that kind of guy.
Right.
And I can tell you right off the bat, like I did LSD once, I did shrooms once, and I smoked some weed a couple of times, and that's it. I never did cocaine, I never did meth, I never did, anything else.
Hmm.
And it wasn't because I was worried about it being illegal. Like specifically cocaine. I kind of wish I would have done cocaine at some point in time because it kind of sounds awesome. Except now I have a heart condition that I'm thinking, nah, not a good idea. When I was younger, I just kind of felt like I didn't have enough money to afford a cocaine habit. So I thought, why even start? And
This is where the from the 1930s the propaganda was set to dissuade people from wanting to do these things because they're like, look, if you do it once, you're going to be hooked. It's not
no,
true.
I wasn't going to be hooked. It's just I know I have a very addictive personality.
I'm addicted to you.
I like ice cream. I love ice cream.
Yeah,
I eat ice cream all the time.
it gives you a
I,
dopamine rush.
I was eating,
Cotton candy, yeah,
cotton candy earlier because I buy these things like 3 times a week. I'm like cotton candy, awesome.
right.
Actually,
That
a candy machine that I make.
sugar and alcohol work on your dopamine receptors the same way that cocaine and heroin do. It makes you feel euphoric. It makes you feel
I recently heard this.
makes you feel satisfied and gives you all those things. You're as much of a junkie as anybody else because you get it. We're as human beings, we get addicted to that dopamine cycle. Of course, and if we have low dopamine and serotonin levels, if you're the sort of person who fights chronic depression, you're absolutely going to grab that dopamine wherever you can. And we just do it in different ways because our understanding is this is good and that is bad. So therefore, here we go.
This is not a conversation I want to have.
It's not a conversation to have.
No, because I just had it yesterday. So
I was just talking in general.
you're fine. I just it's not. You're completely correct.
Harry Anslinger, he's the guy who came up with he was the commissioner of Federal Bureau of Narcotics, who came up with and one of them was a female, and they were smoking a reefer, like smoked 2 joints. That's all that propaganda and calling it marijuana was to make it sound as Mexican as possible because then they could say that like Mexicans were dangerous and Mexicans are going to rape you, and that's what marijuana makes Mexicans do. It was just called.
I'm only a quarter Mexican, so I'm only a quarter dangerous.
It was called. They just called it like weed back then. It was weed, grass, hash,
Cigarette.
I mean, whatever. But
Well,
marijuana,
that is a term.
it is.
Jazz, because you're a jazz musician, and that's what you do. And it's like, are you kidding me? Those guys were all doing heroin.
Right, they're doing the hard stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't think the jazz cigarette was a big deal. So
No, that was just to take the edge off. So they bastardize drugs to make it there's a better story behind actually why Anslinger did this around the turn of the century. And it's the reason, this is what I heard. The reason why they outlawed hemp and marijuana in the United States, apparently, was because William Randolph Hearst of the Hearst papers, he was the biggest paperman in the world. Okay, he controlled the news. He was
I know where this is going.
wealthy as F. He's the one who told, he said, I want you to go down to South America and cover this revolution. They're like, there is no revolution. He's like, if you make up the stories, I'll make up the war. Like, I'll manufacture the war, basically. He was that guy. He was wagging the dog long before long before all the folks who were still doing it. But
nice call there. Wag the dog.
there was a apparently, because William Randolph Hearst was a intelligent businessman, and he was the largest newspaper printer and producer in the world.
And he was white, right?
Of course. Well, they had this new crop had been introduced, not a new crop, but a crop that had been around, but it had been reintroduced to the United States as a replacement for wood pulp from trees in order to make paper. So they didn't expect actually Congress to actually pay attention to it. And they didn't expect that the absolute inexpensive like manufacture of weed, because it, like a weed, it just grows in the sun. It doesn't need a lot of caretaking in order to grow.
Right.
And it's
by the way, just to interject real quick, there is no THC in that because there is a male and a female plant.
when they love each other very much.
Yeah. So I know right where you're going with this.
So the United States had said, well, this is a much cheaper way for us to get our paper manufactured. We're going to go ahead and use hemp. And Hearst had forests that had been cut down. Forests. Hearst made his money by selling the wood and the pulp to the plants to manufacture the paper that he also used to sell his papers on. So he was much like Warren Buffett. Own the freeway, own the tire factory, own the petroleum, own the engines, and own the trucks, and then put your goods in those trucks. Like,
right.
Cover it all. So he had covered it all. He had stood to lose like 80% of his fortune if they adopted using hemp, which is super cheap and super plentiful, instead of using his wood. And he said, you know what? We're going to kill it. And that's when he started running pieces in the paper, because he controlled the papers, about the devil weed. And he got Harry Anslinger, for the commissioner of Federal Bureau of Narcotics, on his side and said, listen, we need to kill this hemp bullshit because it's going to cost me my fortune.
Yep. And there's a couple other things here, which is number one, what is the greatest rope in the world that sailors have used for years?
Nylon?
Hemp.
No, not nylon. Also, I know. Since time immemorial, yes, braiding hemp rope has been absolutely, yeah.
Hemp rope is the strongest.
The tensile strength is like steel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It
Well,
is one of
what
the most useful renewable resources that exists on the planet.
what was the Constitution written
Papyrus, hemp. Yeah, David.
on? Hemp paper.
Yeah, because you can actually, and you can not only manufacture it cheaply, but you can manufacture it easily because of the way that plant grows. It actually grows around almost a perfect spiral.
Right.
You can soak it and lay it out
So where
instead of having to pulp it, glue it, bind it, press it, heat it.
I'm living right now, he's on part-time. His name is Marcus. And he's like the handyman guy, right? And he came out and we did something with the window. It was great because he wasn't going to be able to do it. But together our two brains like made one big brain, and we were able to figure out how to make it work. And I'd seen him a couple times and I said, "Hey," I go, "Marcus Garvey." And I was just, I realized after I said it, I thought, I should probably explain myself. And I said, "That's a term of endearment." I said, "Do you know who Marcus Garvey
You had
is?"
to explain Marcus Garvey to a black man?
Well, because sometimes you don't know, right?
Wow.
And he goes, "No, I know who Marcus Garvey is." He goes, "I've read Marcus Garvey." I said, "Look to the east." But you go back and you talk about paper and you talk about printing. I mean, America kicked Marcus Garvey out of the country because he was the first black man to ever actually have his own publication.
Yeah.
And boy, they didn't like that.
That's because he's black, not because of the hemp.
No, not because of that, but just being, and I'm kind of segueing off that direction. So, but he looked at me, he's in my house. He looked at me
Well,
like
I started studying drugs because I got hooked.
he just big eye. He's just like, "Who is this, 6'5" white guy talking to me about Marcus Garvey?"
Right.
Like, I'm like, "Hey man, we're not all racist,
And George Washington Carver made the peanut great. Said any man with a mind could create.
That's right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
This is 4 minutes long. Entertain me for 4 minutes, go to sleep, but hear from his mouth.
Yeah,
Hoodwinked like everybody else. I thought that. So I started studying drugs because I got hoodwinked like everybody else. I thought that drugs were the source of the problems that we were seeing in our community.
All of us agree that the gravest domestic threat facing our nation today is drugs.
But turns out I was wrong. Sometimes people ask, when was the precise moment when you had this epiphany that, oh, it's not the neurobiology of somebody, but instead it's the social context under which they operate? There wasn't a magical moment. There was a gradual change over many years of studying. I learned that the vast majority of people who use drugs like crack cocaine or heroin did not become addicted. And these people behaved in ways that were so responsible, in ways so inconsistent, based on anecdote, based on media reports. So this dissonance caused me to start to shift my thinking. And then gradually over time, I realized much of what I had been told about drugs is pure nonsense. Between 1990 and 2000, that is deemed the decade of the brain. There was a lot of money into studying brain illnesses, brain disease. There was a lot of money in terms of learning about the brain. And during that time, we are looking for some neural footprint of addiction. And we thought that once cocaine interacted with these dopamine neurons, it just had this almost magical power over the person's behavior. We've learned that that's not necessarily the case. In fact, it's a lot more complicated than that, and it has a lot more to do with the psychosocial environment under which the individual is operating, like lack of opportunity, lack of education, lack of healthcare. All of these issues are with us today as they were in the 1980s and 1990s when I thought that drugs were the source of the problem. Turns out, not only was I wrong, society was wrong. One of the ways that we study the brain of drug users is through neural imaging techniques. So we bring people into a laboratory and then we take pictures of their brains. And if they are, for example, drug addicts, we would put them in one category and then we would compare their brains to people who never used a drug. And your pictures, you can say, well, if you look in this area of someone who uses drugs, you can see that it's not lighting up quite as much as the same area in someone who doesn't use a drug. And so therefore, that's evidence of neuropathology, neural damage. It's a wild oversimplification because all you're doing is taking a snapshot of somebody's brain in one moment in time. And secondly, what we are seeing is people's brain structures being within the normal range of human variability. We have now mischaracterized people as being brain damaged, and that's wrong. So when we think of drug addiction, it's important for the lay audience to keep the focus on the person's behavior and not on the person's brain. The person's behavior will tell you everything you need to know. Are they not showing up for work? Are they not meeting their obligations at home? Are they not meeting their obligations in school? Has the person had multiple unsuccessful attempts at cutting down or scaling back or quitting their drug use? All of these sort of signs are important indicators of whether someone is drug addicted or not. And notice, I didn't look at anyone's brain. I'm really looking at the person's behavior.
Get smart.
So just
Okay, can I talk?
yep.
That's pretty incredible to me. And I feel stupid for my earlier comments because I think I don't know. I just think that guy's got it down. You know, I should have known. You know, if you're presenting it, I should have known that it was good. Boy, yeah, it gives me a lot to think about because he's right, and he's coming at it from a different direction,
Yeah.
which is the direction it should be. Like you said, you know, I'm looking at the individual. I'm going from that direction. That's very impressive. Very, very impressive.
He has a book and also an audio book. If I can get a hold of it in MP3 form, I'll send it over to you. It's called Drug Use for Grown-Ups.
Yeah.
And his college didn't like that you put it out there because this was it was when he finally admitted to the world that based on his years of clinical research and so, you know, sociological work and everything, and that he decided to start trying different drugs and see what they did to him. And
Wow.
He and his wife still have like a little ritual. I don't remember what they call it, but it's basically like it's Friday night. It's personal time. It's whatever they have a little name for it, but they basically through trial and error have found what chemicals and at what amounts give them the most positive impact and influence from that without the negative consequences. And he's like, personally, I like meth and a little bit of heroin.
Wow.
Yeah. And his wife has a different concoction. He goes, it's all based on your chemistry. It's based on your chemistry. He's like, the chemicals aren't bad. Chemicals in your brain aren't necessarily bad. Some might be bad for your brain. Some may not make you feel good. They may make you feel bad. And he goes, but he and his wife basically have this time. They do it like once or twice a month, where it's like tune in, like shut off the phones.
A friend of mine, and I won't use his name just to keep it clear, but he went down to, I don't know, some third world country where he did I always refer to it as DMT because I can never remember.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah,
Ibogaine.
and he spent 5 days, in a fenced-in yard with nurses and doctors and things like that. Was throwing up and doing all these things, and I was fascinated. I said, "Man,
We did Ibogaine. What was he? Was he kicking severe alcoholism? Like what was his?
no, no, no." No, he just wanted to expand.
Well,
And DMT is something that I've wanted to do for quite a while, but I need it to be done. I need a guide. I need to be, somebody I could trust, and it just hasn't happened yet. And that's been like, I don't know, 4 years now that hasn't happened.
DMT only lasts for like 15 minutes, which is
I
great.
know, yeah, because you're in and you're out, which to me sounds cool. Like I don't want to be gone forever.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, apparently during the time that you're gone, it's infinite, but the physical time that you're out is only like 15 minutes. Yeah, I think it's good to have a trip sitter, have somebody who is familiar with.
Yeah, and I try.
Have a little Xanax there for you just in case you flip out. I mean, there's ways to reverse it, you know that, right? Like you can reverse the psychiatric negative events. Little Xanax, if you start freaking out, it'll clear that.
See, I don't know all that stuff. That's not. I'm pretty basic.
I'm just telling you to tell you.
I
know.
I did shrooms I think it was about 2 years ago. I did shrooms for the first time, but they weren't even actually real shrooms. They were like made in a laboratory.
Yeah, most of them are these days.
And
there's nothing wrong with that.
And the first part of it was fantastic. I mean, it was amazing. It was everything I could have ever wanted.
You feel like you were on a roller coaster? Ooh.
Well, and somebody that I was trusting to guide me.
Yeah.
And she would just be like, and now it's time for the audio part. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, ooh. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, how do you know this is happening? She's like, I know what's going on. And then she vanished. And I went into a total paranoia standpoint. Like I always refer to it as my Tom Cruise moment. Because I just was out of my mind.
Yeah.
It got really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
To where I went back to my house. I thought, oh, they probably stole everything. And nobody stole anything.
Yep.
Like, okay, all right, nobody stole anything. I'm like, they've wired my house now. You know, they're listening to everything I say. And I wouldn't even speak out loud. I would like, I tried to write the stuff down because I called up my, it was like, I need you. And then the next day I had to deal with my parents and, you know, on and on and on. I was just like, okay, this is totally not worth it. You know, I'm never doing this again. This sucks.
Yeah. Mushrooms and I would not recommend mushrooms for you.
No, I did not do well.
LSD, maybe. LSD.
I did that once. And I kind of had the same experience.
DMT, it's gonna be like have to hold you down while you come back. But when it's gone, it's gone.
At least you're in and out. That's what I like about it, because when I did, I've only done LSD once in my life. And when I did it,
That's a 12-hour commitment.
yeah, because when I came home, I'm laying in my room going, oh, I don't like this anymore.
Mhm.
You know, I like the first part of it. That was great. You know, you get to do the wee, look at, ooh, you know, you get to do all those kind of things, and then it was time to go home, and we were doing it, and we were doing 4-wheel driving, which was a stupid mistake.
Yeah, so that's a great idea.
Because we were like waiting for it to kick in, went to like Del Taco over in Santee,
Mhm.
and then it all hit at the same time,
Nice.
because all of a sudden everything looked beautiful. And you know, Santee is not a beautiful place.
Right. There's no aurora borealis.
Everything looked beautiful, and then our friend who was driving, he were like, I don't know if that hole is huge or small. Well, it was huge, but none of us could tell. So we finally got back home. And then, you know, you're throwing darts, watching them trail, and the whole entire thing. That part's kind of fun. But it didn't really do anything, you know.
I walked around my neighborhood a lot. I went outdoors a lot. I looked up at the sky a lot at night. I didn't like looking at lights. I can tell when it kicked in because I was looking at my phone, and all of a sudden, looking at two-dimensional text would hurt my eyes. And then when I looked up at the television, I couldn't see it as three-dimensional, like my brain would process it otherwise. I saw it as choppy two-dimensional light. And my brain had flipped open to, view things as they are, not as I have adapted to them. And I was like, well, put the phone down. I literally can't comfortably look at font and numbers. My brain was, it already started to lift the veil to say, like, look out here. There's way more going on around you than you can't even fathom. I was like, wow. I was amazed. This was like 3 years ago.
I had
I was amazed.
I had two things happen. One was a buddy of mine whose parents had both died in a car accident.
Mhm.
And he lived with his brother. And the house was dusty and dirty.
Mhm.
They didn't change anything in the house.
Mhm.
He had a bad trip, but he did a really good job not telling us. because for him, me, and my other friend, it was our first time. So he did a really good job, just like, I'm never doing this again. And
Right, and not give,
that's
not
kind of
give
what,
you a reason to freak out.
yeah, it's kind of what I decided to do. I'm like, I'm never doing this again. This is horrible.
There
Yeah.
are there are some things that I wouldn't. No, I think everything. I think I would do everything at least twice.
The other thing that happened for me is my ex-wife and I had just started dating, and we had an agreement that I don't even know how we got to this agreement, but basically it was like a friends with benefits situation.
Yeah.
And I decided on that night I didn't want to do that because I knew that, you know, when I saw her with another guy, I wouldn't be happy. I'd be upset.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go forward, and so I did. And then, you know, 25 years later, we're divorced. But yeah, I got to get 25 years out of it, so it's all right. But it's very interesting what he had to say about that.
Dr. Carl Hart.
I like his dialogue also. He's using some key words there that I haven't heard before.
Drug use for grown-ups. Yeah. And he traveled to other countries who had for research purposes. And what is it? Is it Spain or Portugal? Portugal. I think Spain and Portugal have both like decriminalized out every drug. Colombia, there's a bunch of countries who just long ago they decriminalized them. And he's at this conference where he knew the people because they were keynote speakers and experts in their fields of addiction and drugs. And he's in Colombia, and this like the head of the anti-drug. There's still anti-drug task forces. There's still involvement, right? They just decriminalize it and trust that most people will be able to handle it. So he's standing around with this group of people, and he's feeling like he's got a secret because he tried a little methamphetamine, and it felt really good. And he's like the head of the Colombian organization, or the governmental drugs are. She was like, "Hey, did you were you interested in trying some whatever it was? I don't remember the name. I'm gonna make it up. Like say Santa Maria. It sounded something eloquent." And he was like, I don't know. No one's offered that to me. I don't really know what that is. She's like, you've never tried it? You never tried it? He goes, I don't know what it is, so no. And she goes, oh. And everybody starts laughing. And she's like, this is the purest form of cocaine that's manufactured. This is, from the laboratory. It's clean. There's no side. She's like, it's warm, happy hug, love, and euphoria. She's like, I can't believe we never gave it to you before. He's like, well, okay, I'll take it. He gets like this freaking, half ounce of pure cocaine from the lab, and they're like, yeah, enjoy. Like, yeah. He looks around and realizes everybody's doing it, and it's not this fiendish sort of like snorting rails off the back of a toilet, dirty sort of thing. It was just like he realized that everyone was just warm and chatty and caring and connected, and they were surprised. Like the black guy, never tried this before, like they're like it's legal and we celebrate it like we would celebrate a good champagne. Like, why wouldn't you?
Huh.
And he was like, that's the first time I ever had cocaine. I had the best cocaine in Colombia from the head of the Colombian, narcotic task force at a convention. At a convention about how to best help our the drug addicted part of the society. And that was another reason why he started to understand. He's like, you're looking around and these are the most highly capable, like double PhD, research scientists, government workers. He's like, they're not the people who get jacked up and don't show up to work the next day. These are people that their entire lives have been dedicated to a level of excellence that most human beings will never even think of trying to accomplish. And he's surrounded by hundreds of them, and they're all enjoying cocaine, on the balcony and catching up. And there's no stigma attached to it. There's no judgment attached to it because they all evolved to understand it's not about the chemical. It's about the person and their socioeconomic status. It's a variety of things that causes that. And I was like, that's crazy. He goes, now that then gave him more confidence. That's when he was like, I'm a virgin. I don't know. I had a little meth. I had a meth pill, and I felt bad about that.
Move a little more forward. Yeah, because I don't know who the comedian is, but he, he talks about how white people do cocaine and how black people do cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And so white people put a line out and they snort a whole entire line. And this guy said black people just do a
Little bump,
little bump because evidently it doesn't last that long.
Mm-hmm. Like 10, 15 minutes.
And I don't know. I've never experienced it, so I have no idea. But when I think about Matthew McConaughey doing The Wolf of Wall Street, where he's like, "Little Tootsie," but that's all he does.
Yeah.
And then I have a hat that says, I didn't realize how popular this hat would be. I was almost embarrassed by it, but my cousin and I, we bought like 4 of them. It says cocaine and hookers.
Yeah.
But it looks like a Titleist. It's a golf hat, and it says golf gods on the side of it. I ended up giving one of them over to my neighbor because he was just like, I want that hat. I'm like, all right, here's your hat. Don't worry about it. But when in the movie, that's what he does. He doesn't do a line.
Right.
He goes, how else are you gonna do this job?
Right.
Cocaine and hookers. And it's just a joke. To me, it's a joke.
It's a punchline to people, and it's usually a punchline about excess.
Yeah, because he's like, you're all day long, you're doing this, you're doing numbers, he's like, this is how you do it. And obviously he goes into other things that we don't have to discuss, but I don't know. I thought it was fun.
The day after they invented the bike race, somebody invented performance enhancing drugs in order to win the race. So it's been with.
There you go. And by the way, I'm going to totally slide off subject here for a second. only because I know you'll understand. So, my daughter just finished Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas,
Nice.
and her first thing was like, never read anything where anybody writes like this. I said, that's Hunter. And she also didn't know that this is backcountry.
Mm,
She's like, you've been saying that for years.
mm,
And I didn't know what you were talking about.
right.
So I'm like, we can't stop here. This is backcountry, you know? And now she gets it.
She's like, they weren't bats. They're like, no, it was my drug trip.
So now, what, a week ago, and I don't know this to be true, and maybe you do, because my friend Bubba, he's a big Hunter Thompson fan also.
Mhm.
A couple years back, I was in a thrift store. All the books are lined up, and there's one laying down, and it's got the shark, the great shark
The
hunter.
Great Shark Hunt, yeah.
Yeah. And then Bubba goes, yeah, man, he did a deep dive. They came up, they got the bends, then they had to go into decompression chamber, and all he wanted was his typewriter, and he wrote the whole entire book. The book is huge, man. I mean,
Yeah, it's like 450 pages.
yeah, it's big. I mean, I paid $2 for it, so I got my money's worth. But he said that's what he wrote while he was in there
While he was in the yeah.
for like 48 hours. I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, it sounds a little too good to be true, but it's Hunter, so maybe it is. I have no idea.
Don't let reality get in the way of a good legend.
Yeah. Well, I'll let Angelica read it. Yeah, she can tell me all about it. And now I told her, because I said, look, we're not going to watch Fear and Loathing until you read the book. Then we'll watch the movie. But I honestly don't really care about that movie as much as I care about Where the Buffalo is from. Because that's the one to me that like really locks in. Bill Murray just, bam, he nails it.
Oh yeah.
So anyhow, we should wrap this up.
It's wrapped. All right. That's the show.
Welcome to self-help, whatever.
Pattern interrupt, whatever, it doesn't matter. Hey, just two guys chatting. That's all it was. Just two guys chatting. Want to know a little bit more, go to the shelfhelpshow.com. You can grab a link for Drug Use for Grown-Ups by Dr. Carl Hart. It'll pay the show $1 if you pick that up. Any other resources that we use today, I'm keeping tabs with them. We'll learn a little bit more about Metabolife and how 2 drug enforcement cops got busted for meth, set up this company, killed some football players, and went bankrupt. Amazing. Good stuff.
Oh, and you can always go to zerolimitsmusic.com, zero spelled out. You can
0.
find all of my crap that I put out there. And
Mm.
please buy something so that I don't have to get a real job.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No, nobody
No.
wants to have a real job.
No. So yeah, I'd say make good choices, but you'll make whatever choices you want to make. So
Yeah, and I have a desk now. We're getting really close. Mr. Sinatra and I are going to release something very soon. And we hope
Tip your waitress, spay and neuter your pets. Love one another, love yourselves.
that's right.
Peace out. Second name.
Tip your waitresses.
That's right. Put your waitress back into the full upright position.